The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, each crystal catching the camera flashes like sparks of fire. Laughter and champagne floated through the air, but my stomach twisted as I stood at the edge of the red carpet. The $10 million charity gala. Every seat a symbol of power, every gaze a judgment. And right there, stepping out of the limousine in my dress, my heels, my spot, was my sister. She waved to the crowd, smiling like she belonged, while our parents clapped proudly from the sidelines. My name had been erased from the guest list, replaced with hers. Their whispered words echoed in my head. You'd embarrass yourself. Let her represent the family. I felt the heat of humiliation burn across my skin, the cameras ignoring me as they swarmed her. She posed, radiant, like the chosen one. They thought I was finished. They thought this moment would shatter me forever. But standing in the shadows, I clenched the small object in my hand, a proof they didn't know I had. And that proof would change everything. Growing up, I learned quickly that silence was safer than speaking. My family was loud, competitive, obsessed with appearances. My parents especially carried this hunger for status. Every award, every photo op, every dinner party was treated like a performance. And if you weren't shining bright enough, you were better off in the background. That was usually my place, the background. It wasn't that I lacked talent. In fact, I often carried the quiet responsibilities others avoided. I cooked, I cleaned, I helped with errands, and I worked part-time jobs from the moment I could, handing over more of my paycheck than I kept. But those sacrifices were invisible compared to my sister's sparkle. She had the looks, the charm, the effortless way of making adults fawn over her. My parents adored her for it. She was the face of our family, the trophy they displayed. And me? I was the placeholder. The invisible scaffolding that held everything up but never got noticed. Our house reflected it too. My sister's bedroom glowed with pastel walls, framed certificates, and the newest gadgets. Mine was smaller, tucked at the far end of the hallway. I kept it neat, lined with books I bought secondhand and a small piggy bank I'd been filling since I was 12. That piggy bank was more than coins. It was my dream of independence, the promise that one day I'd step out of their shadow. But they always had a way of reminding me how small I was. One memory still stings. It was a neighborhood barbecue. The homeowners association president had stopped by, and everyone gathered to mingle. My mother, proud as ever, introduced my sister to the president. This is our future lawyer, the pride of our family. The crowd cheered, clinking glasses. I stood right beside her, holding the tray of drinks I'd prepared, sweaty from grilling for hours. My father smirked at me and said, loud enough for the group to hear, "And this one? Well, she's still figuring it out." Laughter rippled through the guests. I forced a smile, though my throat burned. That wasn't the first time, nor the last, that I'd been reduced to a punchline. My sister basked in the attention, soaking up every compliment, never once glancing at me. That night, lying awake, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was nothing more than a shadow, destined to serve quietly while my sister took the spotlight. Still, I pushed on. I studied harder. I worked longer. I found part-time gigs tutoring, babysitting, anything to grow my savings. And whenever I could, I poured into others, helping classmates with projects, neighbors with errands, even volunteering at the community center. It was the only place where I felt seen, where kindness was valued more than polish. But my parents never noticed. Or rather, they noticed, but they dismissed it. The cracks in our family were widening, even if no one else saw them. The more I gave, the more my parents leaned on me, and the more my sister took center stage. She became the chosen one, the face they paraded at every event. I should have expected what was coming next. When the charity gala invitation arrived, a dazzling white envelope embossed with gold, I found it first, sitting on the kitchen counter. For once, the letter was addressed to me. The foundation had chosen me to represent our family after my volunteer work at the center had caught their attention. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I had stepped out of the shadows. Maybe I could stand on my own. But my parents had other plans. Their smiles faltered when I showed them the invitation. My mother's lips tightened, My father's brow furrowed, and my sister's eyes glimmered with envy. A few days later, the decision was made. Without me. My sister would attend the gala in my place. "You'd embarrass yourself," my father said flatly. "This isn't your world." Let her handle it. My heart cracked, but I didn't argue. I had been dismissed too many times to believe my voice mattered. Still, as I watched my sister preen in front of the mirror, rehearsing her smile, I tightened my grip around that piggy bank in my room. The weight of it reminded me that I wasn't powerless. I just hadn't shown my hand yet. And that was the first sting. The moment I realized this wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was theft. The kind of theft I wouldn't let them get away with forever. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of rehearsals, fittings, and whispered conversations I wasn't invited into. My parents hovered over my sister as if she were royalty preparing for coronation. The dressmaker visited the house twice, seamstress pins glittering under the chandelier as fabric swished around her perfect frame. I watched from the staircase, silent, invisible. "Stand straighter," my mother corrected her. "Smile with your eyes," my father coached. They never even looked my way. At dinner, my sister flaunted her schedule: makeup trials, etiquette lessons, a driver assigned for the night. My parents nodded, proud. When I cleared the table, my mother muttered, "At least you're useful for something." It was a small cut, but like all the others, it bled longer than they realized. Soon, the humiliation became public. Rumors trickled through neighbors and friends. Somehow the story twisted. I had been invited by mistake. The foundation really wanted my sister all along. I overheard the whispers at the grocery store, at the community center, even among classmates I had once helped. Each rumor pressed on my chest like a weight. Nights blurred into sleepless hours, my heart racing even in silence. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning, 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 like my thoughts refusing to rest. My appetite shrank, my reflection hollowed. Still, I kept working, kept showing up. If I stopped, I feared I'd disappear completely. But no one stepped in. Not my parents, not my relatives, not even my sister. The world seemed to conspire in silence, isolating me further. Until one evening at the community center. I had dragged myself there after class, exhausted, to help with tutoring. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and crayons. As I leaned over a student's worksheet, someone placed a cup of tea beside me. "You look like you could use this," a voice said. I glanced up. It was Mrs. Patel, one of the coordinators. She was older, warm-eyed, always wrapped in colorful shawls. She smiled gently. "Word travels, you know. But I don't believe it for a second." Heat rushed to my cheeks. "Everyone else does." She shook her head. "Everyone else only sees what your family shows them. I have seen what you do here. I have seen who you are." She tapped the cup toward me. "Don't let them convince you otherwise." Her words cracked something open inside me. A reminder that I wasn't completely alone. That night, walking home, the city lights shimmered across puddles on the street. My reflection stared back at me, fractured and doubled. For the first time in weeks, I lifted my head. If Mrs. Patel saw my worth, maybe others would too. But I also knew my parents wouldn't stop. Their pattern was clear: diminish me, erase me, replace me. And now they had a stage as grand as the $10 million gala. Something inside me hardened. I began collecting, quietly, carefully, copies of my volunteer records, letters from the foundation, screenshots of emails, proof that the invitation had been mine, proof that their story was a lie. I tucked everything away in a folder, hidden behind textbooks in my room. Each piece felt like a stone stacked onto a wall I was building, brick by brick, defense by defense. Because if they wanted a war of appearances, I would not walk into it unarmed. And though my heart still ached, though the sleepless nights still haunted me, a spark had been lit. Mrs. Patel's words echoed as I sealed the folder shut. I've seen who you are. That was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. The gala was only days away when the pressure sharpened into something heavier, more calculated. I came home from class one evening to find my parents waiting in the living room. The air was thick with tension, like a courtroom before a verdict. My sister lounged on the couch in her new gown, scrolling through her phone, a smirk tugging at her lips. My father folded his hands. "We need to settle this once and for all," he began. "Your behavior has been disruptive." "Disruptive?" I repeated, my voice thin. "You've been telling people the invitation was yours." His tone hardened. "Do you understand how humiliating that sounds for this family?" How childish. The folder in my backpack suddenly felt like a stone pressing against my shoulder. Proof. Real proof. But I stayed quiet, listening. My mother leaned forward, eyes cold. "If you care about us, you'll stop spreading these lies. Your sister is representing us." End of discussion. They weren't asking. They were declaring. But then came the blow I didn't expect. "We've spoken to the foundation," my father said, sliding a folded paper across the table. "They confirmed your sister's attendance." "You were never officially on the list." I stared at the paper. It wasn't an official letter, just a vague email printout with no signatures, no letterhead. I could see the gaps immediately, but my parents watched me with smug certainty, convinced they'd cornered me. That night, I felt the weight of hopelessness crush me harder than ever before. I sat on the edge of my bed, folder open, papers spread across the quilt. Proof that the invitation had been mine. Proof they wanted to bury. For a moment, I thought about burning it all, pretending none of it had happened. But then my hand brushed against the piggy bank on my shelf. Its surface was cool, worn from years of being moved, shaken, protected. It wasn't just a jar of coins. It was my history of perseverance, every odd job, every hour of effort when no one else believed in me. And suddenly, I knew I couldn't let this go. The next day, I called the foundation myself. My heart pounded as I dialed, palms slick with sweat. When the coordinator answered, I explained everything, carefully, factually. Silence stretched on the line. Then, "Yes, the invitation was addressed to you," she confirmed. "We have your name on file." "Is there a problem?" Relief and fury collided inside me. "No problem," I whispered. "Not yet." When I hung up, I sat back in my chair, breathless. My parents' lie had cracks, cracks I could widen. I began planning, methodically. Copies of the foundation's confirmation went into my folder. Dates, times, signatures, every piece of evidence was ammunition. And with every document, my fear weakened. Still, I knew my family wouldn't surrender easily. And I was right. 2 nights later, I overheard them in the kitchen. My mother's voice sharp, my father's low. "If she keeps pushing this, we'll make her regret it. Pull her tuition. Cut her off." My sister's laughter chimed in like broken glass. "She doesn't have the guts to fight us." "She never does." For a moment, their words stung, deep, cutting to the bone. But then something inside me shifted. They thought they still had control. They didn't. I pressed my palm against the folder hidden in my bag, the edges firm against my skin. Proof, truth, and the determination they underestimated. If they wanted a war, they were about to see a side of me they'd never imagined. The rumors grew teeth. By the end of the week, whispers spread like wildfire. I was jealous, unstable, lashing out at my sister's success. Neighbors who once waved politely now avoided my eyes. An aunt sent a clipped text. "Why can't you just be happy for her?" My parents fed the fire. At family dinners, they framed me as difficult, selfish. "We've tried to guide her," my mother sighed dramatically. "But she insists on creating drama." My father nodded gravely, like a man burdened with an ungrateful child. My sister, of course, played the angel, modest, smiling, pretending to hate the attention while drinking in every drop. The smear campaign worked. Soon, even casual acquaintances questioned me. At the community center, a volunteer hesitated before asking, "Is it true you're fighting with your family over an invitation?" The shame was suffocating. At night, I tossed and turned, my chest tight with anxiety. My dreams twisted into accusations, voices repeating, embarrassment, disappointment, nothing. But I refused to break. Instead, I became meticulous. Every lie, every rumor, every false story, I wrote them down. Dates, times, who said what. I kept screenshots, saved voicemails, collected emails. My folder grew heavier, its weight a strange comfort. Mrs. Patel noticed the change. One evening, she pulled me aside. "You're quieter," she said softly. "But your eyes, they're sharper." I gave a small smile. "I can't fight them by shouting." "They're louder, but I can fight them with truth." She nodded. "Then make sure your truth is undeniable." That became my mission. I started reaching out, to teachers, to the foundation staff, to anyone who had seen my volunteer work. Letters of recommendation, written testimonies, certificates. Piece by piece, I was building not just a defense, but an arsenal. Meanwhile, my family doubled their efforts. My sister posted pictures of her gown fittings, each caption dripping with false humility. "So honored to represent our family at the gala," she wrote. Comments flooded in. "You deserve it. Proud of you." Each post was a dagger. But instead of retreating, I saved screenshots. Proof of the narrative they were spinning. My body still carried the toll. Dark circles under my eyes, muscles tense, appetite thin. But my spirit shifted. I was no longer just enduring. I was preparing. The piggy bank on my shelf became my anchor. Each night I held it, feeling the weight of coins and bills saved over years. It reminded me that I had always survived by planning, by persistence, by patience. This was no different. The day before the gala, I overheard my father on the phone with relatives. "She won't be there," he said confidently. "We've made sure of it. Everything's under control." I smiled in the dark hallway, gripping the folder at my side. Control was slipping through their fingers, even if they couldn't see it yet. Because the day of reckoning was coming. And no one could stop it. The night of the gala arrived like the eye of a storm. Glittering, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. The ballroom glowed beneath chandeliers, every table dressed in white silk, every guest draped in diamonds and tailored suits. Cameras flashed as the city's elite swept through the entrance. My parents stood proudly at the edge of the red carpet, my sister shimmering in her silver gown. She basked in the lights, posing for photographs as if she'd been born for this moment. And I was supposed to stay home, forgotten. But I didn't. I walked into that ballroom with my head held high, folder tucked under my arm like a shield. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people recognized me. My parents froze, shock tightening their smiles into brittle masks. My sister's face blanched, then twisted into fury. "What are you doing here?" my father hissed as I approached. "Attending the event I was invited to," I replied evenly, handing my invitation to the usher. He examined it, then nodded, ushering me forward. My father's jaw locked, his control slipping in front of flashing cameras. Inside, the evening unfolded with speeches and music. My sister tried to dominate every corner, shaking hands, posing for pictures, soaking up attention. My parents hovered, whispering warnings at me. But I stayed calm, waiting. And then, the moment came. The host stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. "Tonight, we'd like to honor a special guest, someone whose volunteer work has touched hundreds of lives at our community center. Please welcome." The pause was sharp, like a knife in the air. The original recipient of our invitation, Hero's name. Silence slammed across the ballroom. All eyes turned to me. My parents' faces drained of color. My sister's hand trembled around her champagne glass. I stood, the folder heavy in my hand, and walked slowly to the stage. The spotlight burned against my skin, but for once it didn't scorch. it illuminated. When I reached the podium, I placed the folder on it and opened it, revealing the stack of documents, the invitation, the emails, the letters of testimony. My family tried to erase me from this moment, I began, voice steady. The microphone carried every word through the hushed room. They said I would embarrass them, that I wasn't worthy of standing here. So they replaced me with my sister. A murmur rose sharp and uneasy. Cameras clicked wildly. But here is the truth. I held up the letter with the embossed seal, my name clear across the page. The invitation was mine. Not because of wealth or beauty or family name, but because I worked. I volunteered. I gave my time when no one else would. That is why I was chosen. Gasps, shuffling chairs. All eyes darted between me and my sister, who sat rigid, lips quivering. I closed the folder slowly, my heart pounding but my voice calm. I don't want apologies, I said, locking eyes with my parents. I want change. The silence was deafening. My father's face crumpled, fury and humiliation battling behind his eyes. My mother looked away, unable to mask the shame. My sister's composure cracked, her hands trembling as the cameras turned from her to me. And in that moment, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The aftermath of the gala was nothing short of seismic. By the next morning, the headlines told the story my parents tried so hard to bury. Charity invitation scandal. Sister replaced at $10 million gala, splashed across news sites. Social media buzzed with clips of my speech, the words echoing over and over. I don't want apologies. I want change. The image of my sister's stunned face spread faster than the polished photos she had posed for. My parents tried to control the narrative, of course. My mother issued a trembling statement about family miscommunication. My father claimed it had all been a misunderstanding, but the public wasn't buying it. For once, their charm, their rehearsed perfection, their carefully crafted image, it all collapsed. Relatives who had once joined their smear campaign now stayed silent. Some even reached out to me quietly, embarrassed at how easily they'd believed the lies. At the community center, Mrs. Patel greeted me with a proud smile. Truth doesn't need to shout, she said. It just needs to be seen. As for my sister, the fallout was immediate. Brands she'd been flaunting online unfollowed her. Sponsorship offers evaporated. Her friends drifted away. For someone who thrived on attention, the silence was louder than any insult. But I didn't linger on their downfall. For the first time in years, I was free to focus on my own life. I found a part-time job at the foundation that had recognized me, working directly with their outreach programs. The work was demanding but fulfilling, hours spent planning food drives, tutoring sessions, fundraising events. Every late night, every tired morning felt worth it, because I knew I was building something real, something mine. At home, the air grew tense, brittle. My parents couldn't meet my eyes. My father barked commands with less conviction. My mother's sighs lost their sharpness. They no longer had the same power over me, and they knew it. One evening, I walked into my room, piggy bank in hand. I sat at my desk, staring at the chipped surface, the weight of years of sacrifice inside. Slowly, I emptied it. Coins clinking, bills unfolding, a small mountain of proof that I had built my independence piece by piece. I used it as the down payment for a small apartment, modest, but mine. On moving day, I carried the piggy bank with me, now empty, but not discarded. I placed it on the new shelf in my living room, not as a vessel for survival, but as a reminder. I had turned struggle into strength. The contrast was sharp. I thought back to that barbecue years ago, standing beside my sister as my parents mocked me in front of neighbors. That night, I had been the invisible one, reduced to nothing more than a background prop. Now, I was no one's shadow. The piece was quiet, but powerful. I decorated my new space with books, framed photos from the community center, and, most important, my original invitation to the gala, matted and placed in a sleek black frame. Proof not of revenge, but a validation. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch my reflection in the glass of that frame. No longer hollow, no longer small. This wasn't just survival, it was reclamation. And as I stood by the window of my new home, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Maybe you felt it too. The sting of favoritism, the weight of betrayal, the way people with power try to convince you that your worth is theirs to decide. But here's the truth. Worth isn't something they hand you. It's something you claim for yourself. I was told I'd embarrass my family, that I didn't belong, that I should stay silent. But silence never set anyone free. Standing in my truth did. Have you ever faced that moment when someone tried to erase you, replace you, or control your story? How did you rise above it? Share your experience in the comments. Let this be a place where voices that were once silenced can finally be heard. Because no matter what they say, you are undeniable.